Hello and welcome to the DPC Show Singapore Major Preview. I'm your host, Dan Offen, aka Mr. Big Jams, and with the help of 5 of the world's top analysts, I'm going to be taking you through all of the major teams, region by region. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, I can be found at Daniel Offen, and if you'd like to financially support me for creating this show, you can find a link to my Patreon in the episode description. This was recorded over the last couple of days, and of course, the major status has been somewhat fluid, so there might be a couple of edit jumps in the show as I edit out teams that have dropped out and players that have fallen apart, and there may also be some slightly irrelevant bits as things have changed. Apologies for the late release of this. It was had to be recorded late just because of so much stuff was being changed. But obviously some teams have all played and will have been recorded before they played, and the Europe one we recorded of T Governor was done after the results on the first day of the wild card, so there's some chat about that there. But that's enough to do about that. We're going to be moving on straight away to Europe, where T Governor is going to be taking us through the teams there. Okay, so just to kick off, let's talk about EU as a region as a whole, where you kind of feel it sits within the pantheon of regions overall. Do you feel, as we talk about each of these teams' relative strengths, that they are at the top echelon of Dota teams or somewhere in the middle?
I think they are in the top echelons if they had the full rosters. I think when we speak up 4 teams, only 3 of them we can truly credit to being at the top right now, because of course Nigma, they've had the unfortunate case of mind control and the COVID position, and then they're also role swapping. So they're kind of, in all the teams at the major, they're probably one of the weakest because of the amount of changes they've had to make. But in regards to like the full body rosters of Secret Alliance and Liquid, then yeah, they're easily probably, I'd say, top 6 in the world right now, or at least in this major.
Certainly. Let's go into Nigma then, who you mentioned. We've seen Nigma play quite a bit today already, and they've not necessarily performed as they might have hoped. They're missing mind control, and RNM is playing off lane for them. So talk me through a little bit about this team. What's, I guess, going wrong for them so far, and what could, I mean, there's a very small chance they get through, but what could start going right?
I mean, to start with, I think we have to be very honest with Nigma and be like, we should be grateful that they turned up to the major with the roster that they had, the issues, and still play with the coach. Because like this just isn't the caliber of Nigma that qualified, right? Like if you said that this was the team playing at the major, then like it's so underwhelming, unfortunately. And it's not just because of coach swaps for mind control. It's Kuroki swaps for mind control's position, coach stands in for Kuroki. So they're technically actually with 2 substitutes. And I think that alone, like they kind of struggled to qualify for the major alone with their full roster. And then they're coming to the major with like this kind of weakened team as well. Like, so I already put them in the bottom 2 of the wild card with the full roster, with how they played in the European group stage. But then, yeah, with the changes, it's hard. So I think bounce back, I think they need to just find their grounding, specifically with what is Kuroki bringing to the off lane. He even played mid in a couple of these games. By the way, let's be very clear. Like they're swapping roles like that. It's crazy. Like if they want to have a bounce back, they just need to find just something for Kuroki to fill into, and also to get RMN into the game. Like the last time he stood in for Nigma, he was actually popping off. He was doing some work, and then. And today, March 27th, when they played 3 series, it was just underwhelming. So this major, this wildcard, it's unforgiving. If you have one bad day, you can basically say you're out of the major. So yeah, I think they just have to be able to have this kind of psychological bounce back of not feeling too defeated. But I don't think they are, just because they know the position they're in, right? They have no mind control. Kuroki's playing a new role. It's not going to be the end of Nigma. It will just be a little bump in their road.
It's quite hard to say, I think, from these matches we've already seen if this is a typical Nigma. But so it's hard for me to ask you the question, what can we expect to see coming out from Nigma in the rest of the games, and what have we seen? But what distinguishes
we don't know
so far? That's
it. Don't know, you know? Like Kuroki played mid, he played offlane, he played 5. RMN played offlane, he played 5. Fuck, next time let's put RMN on mid, you know? Like they're just kind of rolling the dice. You know, Weehao played offlane, he played safe lane. Has he touched mid lane? I don't think so. I maybe he has, but that's what distinguishes the team right now. I hope they're having fun. I hope they're enjoying the moment, but they aren't really putting anything down, which is like, we deserve to get top 3. You know, like Monaco Gambit, Liquid, Vici. These are the 3 teams that have proven today, at least, that They deserve to get through to the group stage, and I just hope that Nigma, they can enjoy the final games, and with that enjoyment, it might might bring victory. But if they aren't enjoying it, then sure, like it's going to be rough. But I just hope that they keep their heads up, because I'm not seeing the bounce back occur with how kind of around the place they are.
Great. Let's move in then to Liquid, who you just mentioned as having a fantastic first day. What have we seen coming out from Liquid? Is it very similar to in the DPC, or are they pulling out anything new and interesting?
In regards to Liquid, sorry, I zoned out for a second. My brain was like, yeah, Nigma, how can they win? All right, no, Liquid. All right, so Liquid, I think that they have proven today that they just have a really nice concept of the draft. In regards to they basically pick a really annoying hero, and then they pick the dudes that's going to win the game. But the annoying hero makes you draft around him. You know, like they pick a Puck, you're like, fuck, Puck. They pick some, you know, like some Bloodseeker or some, you know, what else did they pick today? They picked IO Carry, you know, like they're picking such a nuisance heroes that you then realize, wait a second, how are we dealing with this Husker or with this Lone Druid, you know? So I just like the way that they set themselves up to kind of last pick, like the gotcha hero. And yeah, they're just playing really good Dota, and they've done a quick 6-0 today. Like, so yeah, I rate Liquid a lot. I think so my predictions, funny enough, I'm not just saying this. I promise you, I'm not saying this, all right? My predictions coming into this was Vici Gaming first, Liquid second, PSG third, Monaco fourth, or T1 fourth, either way, something like that. So I'm kind of happy that my predictions are somewhat standing true. I'd love to see Monaco Gambit do an upset, but yeah, Liquid, they've surprised me a lot, and I'm looking forward to that Liquid Vici game. I think it's tomorrow, so March 28th, just in case this doesn't come out today, therefore not tomorrow, but you get the point. But that is going to be such a great series, as it should basically be deciding who's first place. Does it matter though? Not really. This group stage, there is 0 point in seeding. So as soon as you get to top 3, you're good, you're happy, pat yourself on the back, reset, go again, group stage, try and get to the playoffs. So, but yeah, it's really good, especially for Europe, that we have such a strong showing in the wildcard.
Talking through Liquid as a team, a lot of teams I think sometimes feel imbalanced. There are certain players who pop off more than other players, or in the case of a team like EG, different players pop off at different times. Liquid always seem to me to be a relatively flat team, and that they work very well together, and there's not necessarily one player who ever particularly stands out. Would you agree with that, or do you think there are particular players that people should keep their eyes on when watching Liquid?
Well, normally I'd agree that they are a team that plays around their kind of synergy. You know, they've been one of the few teams that stuck together for so long. But, you know, today they proved that, you know, Mickey can dumpster any lane he goes to. You know, he 1v1 beat Puck Viper matchup where he killed the Viper, I think level 2 diving tier 2s. And then, of course, you know, Koikva, his hero pool alone unlocks Liquid to play well. So I think we could say that team synergy works, but today alone, I think Mickey just popped off on another level. And I think, yeah, just all the core players on Liquid just elevated their game today. And that alone is scary, because you can see in their drafts how confident they are, because like they're picking like some Puck carry, some Veno Bloodseekers off lane core type of thing, and like they're playing with it, you know, because they are just playing with that confidence. And that's scary, right? When a team has, you know, at least 3-4 strategies, and they're able to execute them well, and they're happy, and they're confident, that's like a recipe for a deep run. So, like Liquid, they look like they have the players have stepped up a lot. So,
great. Let's move on then to the teams that we've not seen anything from. First is Alliance, who are in the group stages. Alliance, I think that when we spoke through the DPC, you weren't necessarily shocked that they did so well, but you were maybe a touch surprised that they were as top tier as they were. Talk me through Alliance's strengths coming into this group stage.
They have a full roster. It's hard to come by in the major. I think, jokes aside, they are incredibly active in the map. They play for strong lanes. They play for collapsing that quite quickly. And of course, you know, Nika Baby, he often will be this kind of win condition, be it like a Weaver or a Wraith King, whatever Morphling, you know, whatever he's playing, he often will be the fallback plan for Alliance. And I like how in the current iteration of Alliance, Limp stepped up a bit, especially in DPC season, where it used to be Limp would be active, fall off, Nika Baby has to carry the game. Yeah. You know, that was the classic storyline. But now it's Limp actually gets into the game as well. And now we've got not only Nika Baby, you know, winning the game, Limp standing up to the occasion. S4, you know, he's doing his casual thing where he might be, you know, dying a couple times, he might be carrying. Like, there's sometimes he carries, sometimes he doesn't, but you get the point, right? They actually have multiple cores stepping up to the moment now. I think what Alliance has that no other team has in this tournament, maybe I'm wrong there, but FNG, he's played online with Alliance the entire time that they have been a team, a squad. They've never seen FNG in person. He's never been to an Alliance bootcamp. So this will be the first time that the team's in full kind of working order at a bootcamp facility, i.e., the hotel. So I think that alone should give Alliance not only the confidence of they came second in EU, but also the confidence of we've actually got our captain. No, not a captain. FNG's not a captain, but our support player into the mix. Let's really get him. And I think that alone should, just elevate the team even more. I would be interested to see if Alliance does have a little bit of versatility in draft against other teams, because they weren't too creative with their drafts. They just executed really well. And I think that might be the shortcoming of Alliance, but still, they play at a very high level. And of course, they have all 5 players now in the same room. So that's going to be a big plus for them.
You never know, though. It could be awkward. It could be like the first online date of a long conversation. They're like, "Oh, we really like this guy," and they meet, and they're like, "Oh God."
Yeah. He eats crisps real loud. He eats with his mouth open or something. Yeah, that's kickable for sure.
What sort of drafts can we expect Alliance to pull out? Are there any interesting heroes that they tend to pick that other people don't?
It's so hard to answer that, right? Because they played 4 weeks ago, and in Dota Talk, 4 weeks is a very long time. So I think they relied heavily on Alchemist, Lion, Keeper of the Light, Tidehunter as their main heroes coming through the tournament. I'd like to see that. I think the variations in EU meta was Tide suddenly became a 5 hero. So maybe FNG has picked up a bit of casual Tide 5, where they might open like Lion Tide, but suddenly Lion's your 4, Tide's your 5. They pick up a strong offlane. Something along those lines maybe. But it's so hard to give you a true answer, because a month of scrimming or maybe 2 weeks if they have a break, like everything should potentially change. But just the key here is to look out for is the draft openings. It's to keep the Light, the Lion, the Tide, the Death Prophet, and then maybe if you're lucky, like a Beastmaster. They're the key ones to look out for.
They're a team that drafts slightly different to everyone else as well, I think. So those picks could be an interesting one. Let's move into the big boys. I suppose everybody's number one for the major. You get the pleasure of getting to talk through Team Secret. Talk to me about why everybody has Team Secret as their number one pick for winning the major.
I mean, like they didn't really break a sweat within the European group stage. I think they lost maybe 3 maps in total, losing 1 to OG, 1 to Alliance, and 1 to Tundra. But in general, they just looked very strong. Why, you ask? They draft with confidence, they play with confidence, they have patience, and of course, they're the best team in Europe, and then arguably the world. Will they be able to win this major? Yeah, you'd hope so. You'd put them in a strong top 3. I think the reason why everyone put Secret at such a high level compared to other teams is you just know that the players and coach Heen, they have the knowledge and experience to be able to understand what the other regions are doing. They actively, during interviews of the European group stage, were saying how they're watching all the China games. They were keeping a finger on the pulse. Like they're not going to be a team where they focus so heavily on winning Europe and then they get surprised when they come out to the main stage. They're a team that they are constantly looking at everything and developing themselves, and it's why they always bring new ideas or have the confidence to try stuff, because they're looking at all, not looking at some, and that alone is why they are, of course, favorites of the major. If they don't come, if they're not in the grand final, it'll be a big shock to Europe, to Secret, to everyone. But who else can really beat them? Like maybe VP, but they have stand-ins now, so they're kind of out the way. Maybe a Chinese team for sure. I think that would be the biggest matchup. It's going to be China v Secret, most likely. But it's because of the amount of stand-ins you have. It's hard to really, like, the good teams are now better because like they have their full rosters, and then the teams that are meant to be showing us why they're good, they're the ones who have been hit by the roster instability because of, unfortunately, with COVID. So now, like, it does kind of go. It's a shame to really test everything because there is this kind of fragmented amount of competition.
It always feels to me like with Team Secret that no particular player needs to perform because they're all capable of, every single one of those players is capable of being a game winner. Is that a true statement, or do you think there Nisha needs to perform for Secret to win this?
No, not really. They just play really well on that team level where it's like I think this is the key thing that's also separates Secret is they're a team that it feels like they don't play for the moment. They play for we already know our timing or the reason we're playing the game. And top teams, they either play like this or they play kind of the feel for the game. It's like, oh, we killed mid, we can keep this momentum going. But Secret, it feels like they're so methodical because like they have their 5 heroes. And then it's like, okay, we know exactly at 22 minutes with this timing, we killed them all. You know, like when we hit this item, we're good. So I feel like Secret just has that kind of extra level of understanding where they're not restricted to only knowing the drafts that they have. They can draft something new and still have the understanding of this is the time we're playing for. And I think teams like, for example, maybe like Alliance or like an EG or pretty much all the other teams who are aspiring to get to that level, they can sometimes look shaky when they're on something new or something that they haven't, drilled into practice. Just because they don't know the beats from practice. I think Secret, they don't need to practice it to work it because their players play so many pubs, they can in the moment be like, guys, this is our timing. I've experienced it from my Pango game I played, 8 weeks ago. Let's go.
Rolodex of games in their mind. Well,
exactly.
A couple of days to wait to Team Secret to come into the fore, but I hope they live up to everything that you've expected them to. But anyway, that's all for you. So thanks so much for taking me through that. And I hope you look forward to the games ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you to T Governor for taking us through Europe. Always a pleasure and massively appreciated him taking the time to talk to me. He can be found on Twitter at @TGovernor. We, however, are going to be moving away straight away to CIS, where Mo Farah is going to be taking us through proceedings there. Okay, so I guess to start with, as an opening kind of question, how strong do you think CIS, if you were to average across all the 3 teams we're going to talk about today, is relative to the other regions coming into this major?
Are we talking about the teams that would have gone or the teams that are actually going? Because
the teams that are actually going, yeah.
Yeah, that's... if asked me a week ago, I'd have been a little bit more, excited about CIS, but unfortunately, the region of despair... I mean, it was the region of despair. Now every region's turned into a little bit of a despair, so that's a bit of a shame. But, VP... I don't think they've officially announced whether Nightfall's going to the major yet. I'm pretty sure. I know they announced before that he was having problems. So, VP obviously very strong. Na'Vi kind of... With Na'Vi, it's really difficult to understand exactly where they're at. And I think it's the same with Monaco Gambit in the sense that they've put in good performances. But it's the clash of styles, isn't it, almost, in a way? I wouldn't be confident about Na'Vi getting out of the group stage, though. I wouldn't, especially with the standards that they now have, because Iceberg and Always Wanna Fly are both not going to the event, which is a big shame, because they've shown in their group stage and things that they can, give good games. And I would have liked to have seen their really aggressive tempo play style come through at the major, but not to be. I mean, they might still try and do it, but who knows? AS Monaco Gambit are the team I mean, they could do okay, but I'm really worried about them. I think the wild card is so ridiculous with how stacked it is. It's when you have this concept that you want 2 teams of every region to be at the major, and then have this wild card for extra slots for the teams from the regions that have better teams. I think it's a good idea, but it means the wild card's going to be nuts. And I personally think the 2 Chinese teams, LGD and Vici, should be the ones that come out on top, especially with Mind Control now having problems as well. So if they get out of the wildcards, I will be shocked. Very happy, obviously, because we talked about how they started getting better and better towards the end of the DPC group stage on Gambit. But yeah, can they do it? I don't think they can.
Gambit are coming into this major intact, though. It's the traditional Gambit 5, which has not been a traditional 5 for very long, of Dream, Afterlife, Immersion, Soneko, and the addition of No One. Does that give them a slight advantage? How do you feel about this lineup here?
It's solid. They've got strong players. That's not the question, though. The question is, can they beat the teams that they have to play against in the wildcards? It doesn't matter if you're a solid team, you have to be the best 2 teams in the wildcard.
Yeah.
So it's all very good being solid and being able to put up good games against teams, but if you can't win them, which is yet to be seen, then it's difficult. I think they've got an okay chance. It's just, I think the two Chinese teams, I think they'll, if I had to power rank them, I'd probably put them like 4th, 5th-ish or so. But they have a solid team. I think they'll give all the teams a game. I just think it's a big ask for them to qualify with the,
and what
with
should
the lineup.
play, viewers of AS Monaco Gambit games who maybe haven't watched any of the CIS games be looking out for in terms of, I guess, the players?
It's no one, isn't it? I mean, that's the guy that everybody wants to watch. I mean, his laning stage is well known across all regions to be very strong. From when the original VP used to play together in the old solo days. Personally, I think Seneca's the big lifeblood of this team, though. I think he's a very strong player. Ever since he got kicked from, I think, was it NIP before? I mean, they've obviously fallen to pieces since, but I think Seneko and no one between them are the two that I would look out for the most. But again, then you compare them to the other teams that are playing, like LGD and Vici, who looked really good in China as well.
It's rough.
Is it good enough to just be good?
How do you feel about the other players in the team? So Dream, Afterlife, and Immersion. What people might not even have heard of those players necessarily. What sort of things do they like to do?
Immersion's the guy that I can't remember what ESL event it was I went to. Who his Earth Spirit is obviously the big thing that stands out to a lot of people, and I think Nyx was really strong. The time when he was playing it a lot, I can't quite remember what patch it was or anything, but I mean he's a good player, but it's the same thing. It's not good enough to just be good. Like Afterlife, like their whole team's performed okay, right? And I think Dreams performed relatively well as well. Can they find the balance between No One and Dream? I think is the big question for me. In terms of their two core positions, you talked about how they have their traditional, but I don't know how old a tradition has to be before it could be called that then. But with No One joining the team, have they been able to find their place between the two of them and find a balance? Because obviously we've seen No One play Morph mid a decent amount, and you need to be able to balance that with a strong core that maybe isn't quite so greedy. So it should be interesting to see, but I've got faith in them. It's going to be really tough.
Are there any particular pocket picks or interesting strategies we can expect for them to pull out, or are you not sure?
It's so difficult to tell because they obviously started playing well towards the end of their group stage. But I think if you want to be successful in a wild card, you can't be reliant on the things that got you through the group stage at that point, because teams will be ready for that. They've got the information on those games. They'll be prepared for it. I think when there's so few games and you only get one series against every other team, you need to be able to come into that with something fresh. And I don't expect them to be playing the similar kind of things they were before. Obviously, Immersion will still play Earth Spirit when he can and things like that. But the core, build up of the draft, I'm hoping will be different. Just I that's not even just a Monaco Gambit. I think that should be to all teams.
Makes sense. Let's move on. Thank you to Mo Farah for taking us through CIS. Always massively appreciated. Mo Farah can be found at Mo Farah Dota, and he should be followed. We, however, going to be moving on straight away to Southeast Asia, where Danog is going to be taking us through proceedings there. Okay, so just to kick off, talk me through, I suppose, where you see Southeast Asia as a region. We're going to talk about all three of the teams, but as a pot, how do you feel about them relative to the other regions?
I feel like I would rank them equal third with CIS in terms of strength overall. The strength doesn't come from their potential. It comes from their lack of consistency, I suppose, because they're very sink or swim sort of teams. You just have to go back to TI9 where Mineski nearly beat Secret, and Secret would have been knocked out in 9th to 12th position. Not to say that they're amazing at TI in general, but, for a team from Southeast Asia, relatively small compared to a juggernaut like Secret, that is what they're capable of. And that's what I'm really looking forward to in a major setting, because it is a lot of do or die situations. We're not looking for a long league format. We're over in 1.5 weeks, basically.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that Southeast Asia feels a bit like a pubby scene at the moment. There's not a lot of necessarily coherency or consistency behind the teams. Is that a view that you agree with?
I would say that they're, I don't know, I would disagree with that a little bit. I know I am, a C fanboy, but
I'd say Fnatic is still very measured behind the way that they do things. You saw. I feel like a lot of teams, though, are getting not enough respect. Like Neon, for one, I don't think are getting anywhere near enough respect. Ice came out with his tier list for Southeast Asia a little while, and you had the likes of Yopaj sitting at like an A-, and someone below someone like a Carl, let's say, who was sitting at A. And I rate Yopaj well above Carl in the mid position. So I think some of that comes from, I don't want to flame Ice, but ignorance, because he has been, over in North America when, a lot more of this Neon rise was happening. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's probably a good way to segue into Team Neon. Running through their lineup again, it's Natsumi, Yopaj, Playhard, Skem, and Yanuel. Are they all sticking together for this, or have they had any substitutions for the major?
They've had a substitution. Poor Natsumi isn't able to come along, so they'll be playing with Rappy instead, which changes things around a little bit. Towards the end of the DPC, they were going through this period where they were nearly at risk of going to the wild card instead. They were able to squeeze through the group stage by beating T1 in that last series, but that was through, it felt like teams were figuring out the play hard 3 Skem 4 a little bit. So they switched Skem to be the 3, play hard to 4, and that worked out for them really well. But now with Natsumi gone, Skem's forced to play in the position 1 role again. They've got Rappy in to play. Honestly, I'm not sure if he's playing 3 or 4, but we could see that play hard was much more effective in that position 4 role. So maybe Rappy is what they're going to go for in that off lane. But I would feel so much stronger if they had their full lineup. It's a little unfortunate, because this is their big showing, on the global stage, and for them not to be able to put their best foot forward, it's a bit unfortunate.
Talk me through Rappy, because he's a player who's been with Neon Esports since 2018, but was somewhat kicked from the team. Is he a strong addition, or do you think they could have perhaps got a better addition?
Honestly, I don't think they could have got much of a better addition. Neon went through this phase where they were just kicking offlaner after offlaner, and no one seemed to work for them. They were trying JG, they were trying Raging Potato, they were trying Rappy. All these different players just didn't seem to work out for them. Finally, they made it work with Playhard in that offlane role and then Skem to the 4. So now, at this late stage of the game, for things to be, jumbled up so much and just to go back to, I suppose, a bit more normalcy or like, Neon was special during the first season of the DPC. That's the big thing that I really liked seeing about them. No one else was playing 5 Troll. No one else was doing these crazy builds that they were. And I just don't want them to go back to the meta. I want them to stick with what's theirs, especially now that with the group stage, with Na'Vi dropping out, 7 teams are actually going to the playoffs from the group stage. Only 1 team is getting knocked out. So I would hate to say it would be them, but I think they're going to be towards the bottom end, unfortunately. I'm crossing my fingers for a lower bracket berth for them, though.
Let's talk through what we can expect to see from Team Neon in terms of picks that you anticipate, and also, I suppose, their kind of key players on those picks. What's kind of a classic Neon strategy that people can look forward to seeing?
I think it's just, again, this is C Dota, so just run it you style Dota, but heroes that enable that a little bit more. They've picked the Wisp a couple of times, they've picked the Keeper of the Light. Once he gets to the level 6, they use it just to, not even just for team fighting, but just to expedite the farm on a lot of their carries. If they went an Alchemist Keeper of the Light, for example, they'll let him farm an Ancient Stack, then they'll recall him, farm the enemy's Ancient Stack, and then use that huge influx of gold to be able to take away towers from the enemy team. You'll see Yopaj play a ton of these playmaking heroes. He's going to be everywhere around the map. He very rarely will lose that mid lane battle as well. So that's really what I'm going to be looking forward to. But the return of Skem to POS 1, that'll throw a little bit of a wrench into things as well. Maybe see more things like the Weaver, the Terrorblade, which we haven't seen quite as much from Neon, but we'll see.
Great. Okay, let's move on to our lower bracket, the wildcard team, which is Team T1, who made headlines with the addition of 23 Savage at the expense of
Jackie.
Jackie, yes, of course. Running through
poor Jackie. I'm still salty about that, by the way. Like, yes, if they were going to do it, now is probably the best time, because at least it gives Jackie time to be able to find a spot in another, hopefully an upper division team. Boom recently kicked Drew, so maybe it's going to be Jackie that replaces him, so at least he's still got that chance to get to the next major and then get to TI. But I think it was Kyle that put out a post recently, or a blog post, maybe it was a month or so ago, about, this upcoming open qualifiers for the lower division. These are the TI Open qualifiers.
Yeah.
Like, if you do not get into these, there is no other way to get through unless you take someone else's spot on a team. So it's it at least gives them all the chances to be able to make it through, because I really rate Jackie as a carry. Unfortunate that he's not there. And someone also that's not going to be there for T1 is Cuckoo. You know, he's not actually attending the Singapore Major either. He came down with a positive COVID test, and it's going to be Forever replacing him. So he was probably the longest standing member of T1, obviously being a Korean org. He was the one that really founded the whole Korean resurgence into Dota, even though there's no Koreans on the team now except for him. And March, I suppose, doing the coaching role. But that put them in a spot where I was like, okay, maybe they could squeeze out one of these two spots to, well, I don't know about that, because Forever, as much as I rate him as a player, it just doesn't feel like his meta right now. It seems like he's way too farm focused, and he just doesn't do anything with the farm. It just feels like he just wants to continuously farm on the map, but some kind of pressure needs to be put on the other team. It can't just all be on your mid laner.
23 Savage as their carry addition isn't a very exciting player. I know you're a Jackie fan, but you've got to somewhat have in the back of your mind that 23 Savage is somewhat of an upgrade. What do you think we can expect to see coming out from him across this tournament?
I feel like he is an upgrade, don't get me wrong. I just, I feel bad for Jackie considering like this was his big chance. But with 23 Savage, he is the one that you build your entire team around. Other teams you'll see, let's say they pick a Death Prophet for the mid lane on Moon on Fnatic, and you can actually build around the fact that, okay, every 2 minutes we're going to push with that exorcism, and that's how we're going to win the game. That's one of our win conditions. But with 23, he's going to pick the heroes that can literally 1v5. We'll see a Phantom Lancers, we'll see Anti-Mage, we'll see Naga Siren, Naga Siren, right? Like, when we see Naga Siren pretty recently, that's the sort of thing that we're going to see come out from him. And that's what I'm a little excited to see, because he is one of those few players that actually can take that role with both hands and win you games with it.
Great. And what other hooks are there for T1 that people can look out for? I think there's kind of two different types of teams. This is my broad analysis of Dota. There are teams which are quite flat, and every single player kind of always contributes always equally in every game. And there are teams that have hooks where certain players will pop off in certain games. Are T1 that sort of team where there are players that people should keep their eye on, or is it all about the teamwork and working as a unit?
Honestly, I think the thing that made T1 special was Cuckoo. Like, his way of thinking about Dota is just so different from everyone else's. So the fact that he's gone is a big hindrance to them. Not to say that they don't have great players. We've talked about Savage. I think Carl is a fine mid. He's not top tier in my opinion, but I think he's totally fine. Zephyr and Whitemon are a great support duo. I think Whitemon is seriously underestimated on the international stage. But I just think it's going to be a little bit too much for them. For my C Pride, I'm fingers crossed that they'll be able to at least grab that third wildcard spot, but it's seeming a little unlikely for me. Okay,
then let's move into the final C team, which is Team Fnatic, who are very much the big boys of the region, coming top. An impressive result. They are all going to be together. Am I correct in saying it's going to be Moon, DJ,
yes,
Jabs, Raven,
for now.
And
Touch wood.
And Masaros. Tell me a little bit about this team. What things can we expect to see Fnatic bring to the playoffs?
I don't want to say it's not one of these teams where everything is based around one person, because Raven has become much more of a giving carry than he was in previous times. Previously you might see him play an Alchemist and he would just farm the entire game and you just wouldn't see him. But he turns up to fights now. He builds things that are going to enable his mid laner and off laner to have a bit more of an impact. And I think he feels like he doesn't have to carry the burden on his shoulders, because you've got a new addition like Masaros coming from the same old Motivate Trust team that Jackie was from, that has really made a big impact. Previously Fnatic were playing with Forev. Like I said before, he farms. Masaros, he gets one item and he's like, right, it's go time to kill some idiots. It's just the way that he likes to play, and that kind of pressure that it puts on the map makes so much space, not only for Raven, but also for Moon a little bit, who previously under the style where he was playing with Forev, because you're sitting back and Forev isn't going to make that kind of rotation, you can go and gank the mid lane, and there's not really any kind of pressure that's being put on any of your core heroes on the enemy team. You
mentioned that Ice tier list earlier, and two Fnatic players come up very highly in there. Firstly, DJ, who's clearly Ice is
Double S.
yes, somewhat in love with, and Jabs as well, who is highly rated, I know, by people across the world. Talk me through what makes those two players so special.
I think DJ is just incredibly mechanically skilled for a support. You know, he's one of those players you could probably compare him to like FY, for example, where, you know, well, ironic because FY's not at the tournament at all, but he's just able to make a lot of stuff happen. And thankfully for my sanity, they're picking him a few more of these style of heroes that he can do a little bit more with. You know, the fact that they're picking the position 1 IO, they also got this 5 IO in their back pocket, which, you know, DJ loves to do.
Yeah.
He's playing Elder Titan a little bit more, which again is one of those, I suppose, a bit more of the flashier style of POS 5 heroes. We can potentially even see the 5 Enigma come out for them, although we saw that it was Jabs playing it the vast majority of the time for Fnatic, but we've seen across regions, you know, a lot of new hero picks are coming out. Like Innocence is playing the 5 Gyro coming out from the Chinese region, so I think that could very much be a DJ style of hero as well. And with Jabs, I think it was at ESL 1 Thailand when he was playing on Fnatic with this roster. It was the same except with Forev instead of Masaros. He was literally carrying games with his Tiny, with his Earth Spirit. He was just making absolutely everything happen, and it's very rare that he has a bad game. You know, you talk about the inconsistency with a lot of these C teams. Jabs is very consistent. You will get at least an 8 out of 10 performance every single time from him.
I think what's interesting about this major format with the playoff teams is that we're only really going to see Fnatic at the business end of the tournament. We're not normally in a tournament, you get kind of a lead in of the teams and kind of a slow understanding of their results and their abilities. That in mind, do you think Fnatic are the sort of team that can start performing immediately when the playoffs start and impress people, or are you worried about them against those other top teams?
I think they can. I think that's the thing. They've always been pretty fast starters with everything. So, you know, you get the likes of EG. I remember in the old days, people were like, look, if EG are playing the first game on the first day, we're going to lose. You know, we're slow starters. We hate morning games. But Fnatic, it doesn't really seem like that's the case for them. And I think it's really going to depend on how much research a lot of these teams have done, as well as how the brackets fall, right? You've got 3 teams from the group stage going into the upper bracket. Who are they going to be seeded against? You know, is it going to be playoff seeded teams playing against each other? Or is it going to be them playing against, you know, some of these teams that come through the group stage? Who knows? And how exactly are PGL going to do that? So we'll see. I think it's going to be heavily dependent on how much research the enemy teams have done. You know, if they let that IO through, Fnatic will first pick it every single time because it has not been nerfed. So there is no reason not to. And they still like it, and with damn good reason. I think we were doing a bit of a running tally during the DPC show, right? Where it was like, I think Raven ended up after 6 games on like 80 kills, 5 deaths, and just like 90 assists or something like that on his IO.
Excellent. Okay, we'll leave it there then. Thanks so much for taking me through that. And I hope you enjoy casting the early days of the major.
Will do. Make sure you tune into it.
Will do. Thank you to Danog for taking us through Southeast Asia. He can, of course, be found at Twitter at Danog. He is covering the wild card for PGL on their streams, and he's also streaming, I believe, with Capitalist as well, and he can be found there. Wonderful analyst. We are going to be moving on straight away, though, to North America and South America, where Neff is going to be taking us through both of those regions. Okay, so I guess just to start, talk me through a little bit about where you see the NA teams sitting within the pantheon of all of the Dota teams that are going to be hopefully coming together in the next couple of days.
Well, I came into this one, as you know, after ending the DPC show, saying that Quincy Crew and Evil Genius should come in first and second in some way, shape, or form. But things are looking a little bit dicey for this major. I'm not sure anyone knows exactly what's going to happen. A lot of the players are broken down with COVID. Quincy Crew is in shambles. EG still holds strong, so obviously they're going to come in first place, as North Americans are destined to be. But it's not looking amazing. The standard, how everything's going at the major right now, teams don't have a lot of time to practice. There aren't any boot camp rooms. A lot of people are shuffling to get themselves computers. Unfortunately, you just don't have that same amount of time to scrim with the teams there that you would in a major that would be happening in non-COVID times. So because of that, I'm a little bit worried, and I'm a little bit worried about who Quincy Crew is going to have as a replacement, given the fact that, unfortunately, MSS broke down with COVID and was unable to attend the event. Now, I know everyone's going to be worried, but fortunately, Quincy Crew weren't boot camping together, so it's only going to be MSS that's affected by it, and he's staying home. Everyone else, as far as we know, is going to be safe.
Let's go then into Quincy Crew as a team. We're not entirely sure who's going to be playing that 4 position. A lot of people have mooted possibly Ramses, but we before we start recording, we're talking about the
Bulba?
various.
Bulba from EG coach to Quincy Crew. No, I jest, but continue. I'm sorry.
What the various geometries of trying to fit Ramses in the team. Yes, you could. Yes, you were right. Bulba could stand in for Quincy Crew. There's various position 4s in Southeast Asia or Singapore who could fill in that spot, but we don't know. We don't know who they're going to be able to get there in time because Milan is not able to attend. Let's have a question mark then over that position 4. Let's talk about the remaining 4 players, the Yara, Quinn, Yelis, and SVG. Whoever they add into there, what do you expect to see from the strengths of that Quincy Crew lineup?
I think they're going to come into this tournament and people aren't sure what to expect from them. They were sitting at the top dog in North America for such a long period of time. I'm sure they have various strategies that were kind of untested. They didn't have to pull out when they were at the top of the region. They were so much stronger than 4 Zoomers who were the second place for the time for a number of tournaments that they took there that it didn't really seem that much of a worry. On one hand, you could argue that they haven't had good teams to scrim against, which is something that I mentioned when we hopped on right away. It would have been nice to have a little bit of extra time to scrim against, all these top contenders in the world. Like you don't have the same quality of scrims like you would against European teams, for example. Yeah, despite the fact that I think that Quincy Crew are on that level. So they've been playing. Quinn's been playing a lot of Tiny, which is unique to him. Unique, I think, across every mid from every region. Not many people have started picking that hero up. It happened to be very good against Nick's Assassin and whatnot back when he was first ban material before we saw a couple of nerfs. That's something that we could see whipped out throughout the tournament. Other players on the team, the fact that MSS isn't there does mess with some of their strategies. I was looking at data before we started the scrim and going back on some old replays, and I was like, yeah, Milan, who's going to stand in for him, doesn't play nearly as much Tusk as MSS. I wonder if that's going to mess with what they're doing. Maybe his Mirana's not quite as good, but now they have to go for something else completely, which I'm a little bit worried is going to mess with their strategies because, like we just mentioned, they don't really have a practice room or time to scrim over there. Everyone is just flying over with 2 days' notice. Then they sit in their hotel rooms and they have to get ready to play.
That's why I figured that maybe they'd end up picking up someone like Ramses to flit into that position 1 position, which is relatively easy to slot someone into without having to change anything up because they're just, mid's the easiest to slot someone into, but position 1's second easiest. And then maybe they move UR to 4, but it's a difficult one to know exactly what they're going to be doing. And also Milan is quite a different player to MSS anyway. So I don't know what they were even planning there. It's very hard to know what we're going to see out of Quincy Crew. But they're a strong team, as you say. I think what's interesting about
playing... Oh, sorry. CCNC's been playing a little bit of Death Prophet and whatnot in his pub, so it's something that we could look forward to. But not a huge amount of insight just because the lack of scrims that are happening and the fact that we didn't have a ton of games to go through over the course of... We only had 7 best-of-3s leading up to this match, followed by the tiebreakers, of course.
And only 3 or 4 of those best-of-3s at a push were of a high enough level to test the team, I suppose. So it's an interesting one to see. I hope we're going to be able to see them at full strength. Let's move on to the team from North America who are unchanged coming into the major and who many people will have as, I suppose, the favourites from the region. EG, they're going to be Isosize, Fly, Abed, Arteezy, and Crit. Talk to me through this team. What makes this team strong? What makes this team tick? And what makes them interesting?
They're the only team out of North America that were actually at a facility boot camping together for their time. So they had the resources that a lot of these other teams didn't have to work with. They had a couple of the players fly over to Southeast Asia just 2 days after the qualifiers ended. believe Abed being one of those two players. So they've had a bit more time to get their stuff together. I don't have the exact details on it, but I'm pretty sure they managed to get himself a couple of computers and have been practicing well over in SEA. Now, I was a little bit skeptical about EG at the start of the season, as I'm sure you remember. Anyone who hasn't watched the last couple of podcasts, the DPC show, some of my concerns about Evil Geniuses, they spent so much time off that they wouldn't really be up to snuff against some of these other teams, that they'd be a little bit weaker at first. And I think for a time they were. 4 Zoomers managed to take a game off of them in the first week of the DPC. And as they went on, they just looked stronger and stronger. I think Ice Ice Ice, for example, only had one bad game throughout the entire DPC season, where it came against Quincy Crew, where it was like 0-5 and Tidehunter. Every other game, he was just a massive force to be reckoned with. There were so many targeted bans onto that guy. His Nature's Prophet was insane. His Tidehunter was insane. His Enigma was insane. Everything about Evil Geniuses is terrifying. How quickly they got back into good form after taking so many months off is very scary. And that's why I will see them coming up in first place, not just because I'm biased, because they have a team of goddamn superstars.
Talk a little bit about Abed as well, who I think we didn't necessarily get to see shine so much in the DPC. I think it was almost the Ice 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 show, but Abed is such a star player. Talk to me a little bit about what makes him so special.
He wins mid. Arteezy just, yes, he's always going to be there to secure the game for you. But if you watch EG's gameplay, it's a little bit like watching Beast Coast, where my best way of putting it is everyone on Beast Coast will die for Hector, so he's able to find farm. They'll go around the map. Their positioning is just so good in the way that you will never have a chance to get at Arteezy, and Abed dictates that. He decides where you are going to play on. He decides your game plan for you, despite the fact that you're playing against him. You're trying to get it at Arteezy and try to shut down his farm, but you have Abed to get through. And if you focus too hard on Arteezy, Abed will rip you apart. If you don't focus enough on Arteezy because you're trying to deal with Abed, he will rip you apart. There just is no winning scenario there. That's part of the reason why I say EG is like a team of 5 superstars. There are no weak links inside the team. Abed shines incredibly bright on that roster. It's why they brought him in out of SEA, play inside North America, despite the fact that there's talent like Quinn inside NA. I think Abed is probably one of the best mids inside the world. He's definitely in my top 3 at the moment.
He's an exciting player. I think what's interesting about EG as a team is a lot of teams that are very, very good, like Team Secret, for example. They feel quite good in quite a flat, kind of filed down way. Every player doesn't necessarily stand out because they all kind of raise to a level. I think when you watch EG, every game one of their players seems to stand out in some sort of crazy way that makes the whole team seem weirdly imbalanced in quality in that game, and then the next game is imbalanced in a different direction.
Nerf the players.
Because they're all kind of these flashy, like Messi style players rather than effective Ronaldo style players.
Yeah, it's a lot like watching an old EG international replay where if Ana didn't pop off, then Thompson popped off, Top didn't pop off, Seb popped off. And how the hell does this happen every single game? It's one of you guys.
They're an interesting team. I hope we're going to see them do well, because it would be nice to see some joy come out of NA.
There's always one thing that you'd probably like is Fly's actually been picking like DP5, which is not super uncommon, but he's been picking Gyrocopter 5 in his pubs.
Okay. It's happening in China quite a lot, so that's
yeah.
one. Let's close up then by going briefly into South America, where we might not get a chance to talk to 1437, so it'd be great to have you cover it. There's one South American team left, which is Thunder Predator, after the Beast Coast very disappointingly weren't able to attend the major, because they're such an exciting team. It's going to be a shame to miss them, but talk to me a little bit about Thunder Predator. Is there anything that we can expect to see from them as a team in the major?
I did a lot of covering of Thunder Predator because they played in every single game I was doing in North America for a time. Of the BTS Pro Series, a couple of South American tournaments that I was watching. MNZ, Leo Style, Frank, Moose, MGZ. One thing that I'm not exactly crazy about is the replacement of Matthew with Moose. Matthew and Leo Style worked very well together because how Thunder Predator did their drafts. They flex picked their 4 and their mid together quite a bit. They would play Void Spirit and Ember Spirit position 4, or play it in position 2. They would first pick whatever spirit hero it is. The enemy team counterpicked it, then they would put it on the pause 4. Matthew would play that quite well. I don't think that Moose does that quite as well as Matthew does. Because of that, I rate them a little bit weaker as far as flexibility of their draft, but Thunder Predator is not a team to scoff at. They ended up coming out on top of what was it, BTS Pro Series 4.
Mm-hmm. They were almost
America.
the top dogs in NA for a while.
Oh, absolutely. Not just NA, out of Americas in general. Beast Coast, they were looking a little bit sloppy before the DPC started. Then after things took off, it surprised even me. It's like, holy shit, where were these guys the last couple of months? Really turning things up. It is a damn shame that we won't see them at the major, as you talked about. It was tons of fun watching Beast Coast play at the last international they were at. Hector on his Wraith King is a force to be reckoned with. In Arteezy's words, how Hector so farm. But Thunder Predator, I am very excited to watch Leo Style. I'm a massive fan. Some people say that he doesn't do quite as well at lands. I say that he is one of the best mids inside the world, and they earn their spot in the group stage here. They are absolutely insane. Winning BTS Pro Series 4 is proof of that. They deserve to be with these top teams.
Great. Well, I hope that they can do well in the group stage. It's going to be very, very tough for them, but we might see them come out with some great results. Either way, thanks so much for taking us through both of the Americas this time, and I'll speak to you soon. Brilliant. Thank you to Neff for taking us through North and South America. Massively appreciated. He can be found on Twitter at NeffSensei, and should be followed. He's a brilliant, brilliant analyst. We're going to be moving on to our last region, which is China, where Kips is going to be taking us through the teams there. Okay, let's kick off then. So let's talk through, I guess, initially China as a region overall. I think a lot of people are thinking it's going to be one of the strongest regions. It's certainly one of the most intact regions in terms of who's coming into the major. How do you feel about China's relative chances this time?
Yeah, so normally I would have said that I don't really rate China as strong as most people think they are. I rate the top 2 teams, IG and Aster, extremely highly, but I think the middle has definitely seen some wonky plays here and there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as you said, now that China is the most intact region, and they have had the most recent tournament as well, with play still being ongoing 1 week ago, I definitely think that they are the most in shape. Mm-hmm. And they're also looking to not have any jet lag or anything of the sort. So as far as, land conditions are concerned, yeah, I definitely think that China looks especially good now.
Mm-hmm. Looking at those bottom 2 teams from the Chinese region, PSG LGD and Vichy, a lot of people, when they're talking about the wildcard, are expecting it to effectively be a wash with those 2 teams going up, especially now that Nigma are not at full strength. Let's start with PSG LGD. Do you think that's a fair assessment of them as a dead set through the wildcard, or do you have slightly more concerns about the team?
LGD, yes. My concerns lie with Vichy. I think LGD's stability and especially the presence of them having a coach in Zhao 8, mm-hmm. who has so much experience with lands, who knows how to adjust his drafts to bring the most stable results possible, because that's what you want for a wildcard. You don't want to take any risks. You want to just make sure that everyone is as comfortable as possible and just plays their own game as possible. And I think that nobody in the wildcard, especially with Nigma being out, is going to be a real obstacle for how just well-timed and well-drilled these guys are going to be playing.
Quite a few people may have struggled to watch any PSG LGD games over the past couple of months, which is probably the case for all of these 4 Chinese teams. Could you briefly give them, I guess, the little hooks to look out for in PSG LGD? What are the key players who are always going to be running things, or are they quite a smooth team?
Faith Bian has looked really good to me, especially on the signature Beastmaster. That man will always take the bottom tower at 10 minutes if he's on Dire. Mm-hmm. And they haven't been on Dire, actually, now that I think about it. I feel like I've seen a Dire Beastmaster so often. He runs the enemy jungle, and the entire team just moves very smoothly after that. I found Nothing to Say to be pretty good on mid as well. Xinkyu, lots of strong rotations towards the runes as well. Good team fighting coming out from this team. I think their play is enjoyable.
Are there any other particular? So Nothing to Say as a mid laner. People will often focus on the mid laner. How do you feel he's performed over the past couple of months?
Honestly, I think that it's mostly the inexperience in exactly doing what needs to be done after the laning stage. I think it's a bit the same. You could say that I consider White Album to be sort of like an even better version of that overall in Aster, where you have these super technical lane dominating players who then after still are maybe you can see that they're not taking the shot calling roles in their teams quite yet, but like from a technical standpoint, absolutely brilliant.
Good to hear. Let's move on to Team Vici then, who I think were probably the other favourite for the Chinese DPC region, and they've maybe fallen down a little bit. They had weaker performances towards the end of the DPC and kind of reasonably strong in the middle. How do you feel about them going into the major?
So Vici still have this puzzle to solve, right? Where they are still playing with Erica over on the carry. And they have by now figured out that he does the best if he's in like an end game scenario where his hero is unstoppable. So he's had a couple of very strong Phantom Lancer games, for example, where, this is a hard PL. He's not going to die anymore. And the other heroes that he's looked very strong on are heroes that can just stand and hold their positioning. So he's pulled out the Razor a couple of times. He's done Medusa. He's done Drow with varying success. And I think that if they enable him to keep staying on those heroes, then they can actually rely on their late gamer. But if they do other things, like for example, the more tempo drafts with something like a Wraith King or something like that, he can farm up a Storm. But his decision making and his shot calling for like the team fights where you really need to take over the game with that momentum just doesn't seem to be there yet. And I would not advise them to start doing that right now.
But what are their bright moments in the team then? Is Ori has always looked like a very strong player to me. Is he the core of the team, or would you point somewhere else?
Honestly, I'd point at PYW. PYW has played some amazing Phoenix games, some amazing Rubik games. The support duo is pulling out all the stops, really. DY is doing great as well. And I think that it definitely enables Erica to always get his form up and always get to that position where he could definitely take the game. And I honestly rate PYW above the Kaka and maybe even Borax right now. Honestly, I think he's playing out of his mind.
Okay, great. We'll watch out for him then. Are there any particular picks that we can look forward to from Vici? Do they play quite standard Dota for China, or are there little hooks or weirdnesses that people can look out for from them?
No, I think that the presence of Erica definitely, as I said, like they might still try to vary from that. Of course, I'm not on the team. I don't know what they're going to do, but I think that definitely restricts them. But what I have seen from actually everybody who has been playing right now is they have all been taking the support gyrocopter for a spin. Everybody except eHome, who's of course not going to be in the major, but who did win the last tournament.
Yeah.
The FMWH championship. So there is a possibility of gyro support from any one of these Chinese teams.
Okay, great. It's exciting to see. I think that's going to be quite popular across the whole major, but we'll see if it's a China particular flavour. Let's move on then to the number 2 team from China, which is Team Aster, who had a bit of tumultuous kind of final little section, and they beat IG, then lost to them. They've been an impressive team across the whole thing. How do you feel about their group stage?
Like, honestly, I rate them above IG right now.
Okay.
I think that they've shown that multiple times in the direct matchup, and I think that overall they're just the most stable team out there. And what I've said about IG in the previous podcast as well, where like how come that they are at the top of the group stage when people underrated them or rated them much lower than that, I should say, is because of their economic outplay, their map outplay. Even when they stumble, they'll get the GPM up. And Aster is the one team that just will not actually let them outfarm them just like that. Aster just looks more stable altogether. And especially, I mentioned White Album before, but I'm just going to bring him up again because he has been an absolute monster on the mid lane.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he's going to destroy a couple of people at this tournament. He looks very, very good.
I think Baboka as well has been, or Borax as he's known now, has been incredibly impressive as well. He's been a long time kind of Dota hipster favourite, but I think currently he's definitely going to be a hook for this team.
He is, yes. Like I like how the Orb of Corruption has really brought back all of his favorite melee heroes. So he might just be playing support Monkey King again. He's been doing it a lot. He might do it again. And of course, he plays Tusk, he plays Earth Spirit, and it's always fun because this man goes in.
And Lanham as well. Lanham is a name that many people will notice and remember from the old days, people who might not have been watching a lot of China. How do you think he is as the position 5 and overall kind of linchpin for this team?
Everything that I know about Lanham is that he is just such a very stable, calm guy. I think he's really an anchor for this team. And that's, I guess, the other difference that I'd want to bring up between Aster and IG is that the experience on Aster is a little bit more spread all around the board, where IG really has to get it from their support duo. Like you have Lanham to anchor on Aster, and then XXS in the middle, and then of course Monet overall in the carry position. So you have that experience distributed throughout different roles, which I think feels very good as a team, to have some impulsivity on some roles and some, more steady force like Lanham is.
Great. Let's move in then to IG to close up. Talking initially about IG, I kind of want to talk a little bit about what their final days in the DPC were, which I talked about with Lizard last week, where Emo had, Fly had an atrocious performance on Morphling, and then was forced down to play Razor in the next series when they ended up moving the focus away towards Emo.
Yeah.
Are you worried about that kind of imbalance in the team? Because a lot of the top teams in Dota always feel quite balanced in terms of the quality of different players. I imagine Fly is now feeling a little bit behind. How do you feel about that team as a balance?
I think that's a problem that they've shown from the start. I think I've said it from the start as well. If Emo doesn't perform, it's just a question if Fly is going to show up. And he's started to do that better throughout the DPC season. So his sort of fallback was kind of sad to see in that regard. I was like, oh man. But on the other hand, I think that for a player, especially when you notice it yourself, it's not necessarily a demotion to go back to Razor. It can also be very much liberating. Like, all right, it's out of my hands now. If I screw up again, it's not going to be the end of the win here for the team. So you should definitely also look at it like that. Like I have no doubt that he was probably involved in that decision as well. Like he might have felt more comfortable doing that. I think it's a good decision
as well. Sorry to interrupt. In the other games, outside of the DPC, have they been all right? Or
yes. But when Emo struggles in mid, the entire team flounders. And that's the problem that they had before Fly started that upward arc. It's like it's all Emo all the way. And if he doesn't, then it's not going to go well. So in order for that performance from IG themselves to come out, they have to either build Fly back up, or they have to be extremely ready to put everything on Emo. And I know for a fact that everybody else who's going to play versus this team is going to be so ready to do whatever they can to throw Emo off his game. So that's the scenario that they've got. And in the direct comparison with Aster, as I said before, White Album is a monster on mid. He's beaten Emo several times now. At the very least, that matchup, I don't see IG winning, and there's probably more that are going to happen like that.
A lot of people have IG as number 2 in their power rankings.
Yeah. Same.
Is that where you'd have them as well overall in the whole of the major, or
not in all of the major? No. Secret is top 1 for me. They're still the team to beat, and after that comes Aster.
Okay, great. Okay, well we'll see how that turns out for IG. I think people have doubted them a lot before and maybe come away eating their words, but we'll see. Thanks so much for joining me, Kips, and I hope it all lives up to it. And I'll speak to you soon. Thank you to Kips for taking us through China. Massively appreciated, Kips. She can be found at KipsSoul. And thank you for watching and listening to this podcast/video. Massively appreciated. This is the final episode of the first series of the DPC show. We're going to be back for a second series. If you want more information on that, you can follow me on Twitter at DanielOffen, and that's spelled Daniel, then O-F-F-E-N. And if you'd like to financially support me for creating the show, you can find links to my Patreon in the episode description. So that's all, folks. Thanks to all of my analysts for taking part in this. I massively appreciate them giving up their time. And thanks to you, the listener, for making it a reality. Thanks, guys. I'll see you soon.